had a near-death experience in 1995 that kind of changed the trajectory of my life. And it was one of those moments where I went to sleep as one person and I woke up as another. Well, first of all, I think that people don't give enough of their attention to their dreams. It's funny because we're asleep a third of our lives and we don't dream for that entire time. But there's a big chunk of it that we do dream, and people just dismiss the human experience during sleep hours as nothing, or because it is very complicated and it's not just straightforward. You're not just walking into a room and seeing what you see. But it's important to know if we have it, it's for a reason. When you think you're waking up in the morning is when you're actually going to sleep. And when you go to sleep at night is when you wake up. So he's just not part of your dream world anymore the same way that he used to be, but he's part of your awakened reality.
All right, welcome everybody. I am here with Happy Ali, author of the incredible Intuition Bible. Highly recommend reading this. I got a first sneak peek, and you can just kind of see that, we're not playing around with this. We got annotations for days on here because the content is rich and powerful. So with that said, Happy Ali, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got to where you are right now?
First of all, I want to thank you so much for having me on your show. And I'm excited for this talk that we're about to have. About me, well, I had a near-death experience in 1995 that kind of changed the trajectory of my life. And it was one of those moments where I went to sleep as one person and I woke up as another.
That is awesome. And thank you for sharing that story because I think a lot of people can resonate with it. That was the main thing that I took away reading from your book was the sharing of the authentic moments throughout each chapter of your life, and how I was able to relate to that for different instances in my life was really refreshing. And it really helps resonate deeper down into my cells when I'm reading that stuff because it allows me to be like, okay, no, like I am on the right track, and there are ebbs and flows, and it's not all linear, and there are some downs, but you're always kind of going up, and there are these moments that you can check back into and see that insight that can help propel you to the future of what you're trying to do. So I love that a lot, and yeah, thanks to our friends at New World Library who helped publish this book. So this is called the Intuition Bible. So can you tell me what intuition means to you, how you would define it, and why has it taken so long for this to become a mainstream topic that is now being talked about a little bit more?
Well, first of all, I had no idea it was becoming a mainstream topic, because if it is, then I'm very excited about it because it wasn't part of my agenda. And I guess I'll have a different answer for that, for the why it's becoming mainstream. And I just made a video about it, but it's very relevant. But the intuition aspect itself, it's very broad when it comes to my definition of it. It's anything that comes from within, anything that comes from not even just within, not from the logical mind. So something that comes that doesn't make sense or doesn't fit the stereotype of where information normally comes from. Because I call it tapping into your inner worlds. But then there's the universe, or our outer universe, the physical universe that also gives us information. But you have to be aware enough to know that your physical body extends out to the galaxies, and that is also your body, and it's not your brain. So if that's giving you information, it's the same as your body giving you information. So any information that comes from outside of the logical mind is what I consider intuition. And it is a different definition than what other people have called intuition, because most people just think of intuition as gut feelings. But mine goes from gut feelings all the way to downloads and channeling and everything. Just patterns in your life. There's so many things, but they're information that comes from somewhere else.
Got it. And why do you think now it's becoming more apparent that we need to foster this skill?
Well, I believe that there's a huge need for it in humanity, that people are talking about ascending to the fifth dimension and having telepathic abilities and talking to aliens, whatever it is that they're talking about. So many people are talking about the future of human evolution, and no one talks about how. They're like, this is going to happen automatically. All of a sudden, we're going to wake up and we're telepathic. But guess what? As much as you could do a lot of quantum jumping, the fun of being on this planet is the process. The process is what we're here for, and I am all for quantum jumping. Sometimes it's required to do a good quantum jump because where you're at is so difficult to get out of, but the process is so much more fun. So I feel that intuition and tapping into your inner resources and learning to communicate with other layers of existence is the first step to where we're headed. So, and I think that the world is requesting and is needing this information so bad that the ethers, or whoever we want to call it, are dropping it into our atmosphere. Now, this is what I was going to talk about. So, when something is needed in this world, and this is not in the book, by the way, so this is just fresh information. When something is really, truly needed in this world, and there are enough people asking a question, the energies or the things that answer, the parts of the universe that answer, and they drop it into our atmosphere, our energetic atmosphere. And I always say, just think about the Earth's atmosphere as the atmosphere that I'm talking about because you can get a good visual. Once that thing is in the atmosphere, the people that tune in or meditating or tapping in or connecting will start downloading that same information. So people across the globe will start receiving that information. But some people have better resources, better skills, better talents, better connections. And those people that are not sitting there and being perfectionists and procrastinating will receive and will act. And those are the people who will actually bring that material into the world. And it will never be just one person. It'll never be just one person because the world is structured in a way that humans cannot all receive messages in the same way. Somebody needs a male messenger, somebody needs a female messenger, somebody needs it in English, somebody needs it in another language. So there will be people all across the world in different disguises or guises that will receive different this information and they will act on it. And then all of a sudden it becomes like a global thing. And I think that might be what's happening to intuition, although I didn't really think about that idea because I really didn't, I felt like I was isolated on this intuition island. But I think it's since it's the next logical step, I'm obviously not isolated, but hopefully I'm one of the first ones in this era with the new voice and new version of it, just so I can sell some books. No, I'm just kidding. Help some people. Help some people.
That is so well said and so right on because when it comes to channeling and everything in between near death experiences, we'll talk about that later, is and just any type of education. I mean, there's people, whether you are subscribed to this or not, whether it's math, whether it's a science in school, there's people that hate science because they had a bad science professor. And there's people that love science because they had a science professor that was super passionate and liked it. Like it's important to have many different types of voices and conduits of information all over because some people don't want to hear it from this type of personality and they need to hear from a gentler personality or someone who's gone through some stuff and has had some trials and tribulations. And unless it's come from someone that's had a really bad life, they don't want to hear it. If it comes from someone that's had, middle class lifestyle, they don't want to hear it. So you're absolutely right. And I think that atmosphere example is really good. You have a lot of great examples that I'm going to ask you about in a little bit. Like the collective consciousness, when like so many people are yearning for a change, like we see this shift around the world that whatever is going on right now, it's just not working out for the majority of people. That's not anything new. Everybody's aware of that. And so I think it's just whether you're, consciously praying or asking for it, or just inside, you're just hoping for something more. I think you're right. It's now reached a threshold where the majority of people are asking for something new. And I think that's that intuition atmospheric download that's taking us that next step. I love that. Okay.
So
So,
wait, can I mess with you for a
yes.
second?
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of say, how you said whatever's happening in this world is not working right now. And I just want to clarify something. Whatever's happening in the world at any time, any given time through history is not working right now. because, and it's also working because that's what makes the desires happen, and that's how evolution comes about. So there's nothing wrong with the fact that things aren't working out for a lot of people right now. That's just the part of it that allows us to create this new next step. Because if things are working out, we just kind of just lay there and do nothing, and evolution just stops. So I just want to give some credit to the world falling apart or seemingly falling apart. Because if you think about it, you're safer in your home than you've ever been in history, ever. Ever, 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 ever. You have more luxuries than you've ever had in your life, ever, ever, ever. You're free to think your own thoughts more than you are ever. There's so many things that are amazing about this world. So it is working out, but the things that are not working out are fueling something new. And I just wanted to clarify that because my name is Happy, and I have to live by that. So
That is a beautiful clarification, and you're so right. And it gets lost so many times, right? We have access to AC and refrigeration and the internet and everything in between, and we can walk 2 feet to a grocery store. So you're absolutely right. And it's all about that process that you alluded to earlier. It's part of the process of
it's
change and
beautiful
growth.
process. I stopped drinking to clear my head and have the best energy that I could possibly have because I think when you're sober, 100% sober, you have your purest version of your energy more often than not. And I was about to release this book and I thought, God, I need my rawest, cleanest version of me to be out there so I can receive and help and do in the best way possible. But guess what? I didn't have hangovers because I did have hangovers before, but my life became like this, very even. My creativity level dropped so dramatically that I became the most unproductive person ever while I was trying to be the best version of myself. And I had to realize that, oh, shoot, not that drinking is the answer, but a little drama does help with creativity and evolution and movement. And we take world peace. We have this idea of world peace and how it's like, if everyone's happy, then we don't move. So I think that little bit of something, that static, that like tug of war or something, it helps us. We need it, but we can be and conscious of what's happening and be separated from the drama so that we're not caught in the drama. But it's good to experience a little bit of ebbs and flows.
And that's why I am, and I'm sure all we are addicted to reality TV in many ways. You're absolutely right, and that's a profound statement. Really need to sit and resonate with that because you're right. A little bit of drama, a little bit of um, a self-made hurdle, if you will, or something like that, to kind of just get you to think about it from a different perspective point is actually really powerful. Thank you for sharing that because I'm sure there's a lot of people right now that have projects, whether they're trying to start their own podcast, write their own book, whatever, and are probably going through something like that, a block or a resistance. So that was really helpful. Okay, so intuition is
Sorry.
anything that kind of comes from the non-material world, something that's not explained by the scientific method that we've been taught to believe as materialists. So what we're going to build on is you had a series of prophetic dreams, one in 2008 about your son, and then one in 2014 about a tragedy. But before we dive into those specific events, your book, you talk very eloquently and poetically about dreams, about what they are, that experience. Can you explain what dreams mean to you?
Well, first of all, I think that people don't give enough of their attention to their dreams. It's funny because we're asleep a third of our lives and we don't dream for that entire time, but there's a big chunk of it that we do dream, and people just dismiss the human experience during sleep hours as nothing, or because it is very complicated and it's not just straightforward. You're not just walking into a room and seeing what you see, but it's important to know if we have it, it's for a reason. The soul has its purpose for dreaming. The mind has its purpose for dreaming and sleeping. So there are different layers of uses of dreams or the dreaming process. And I go over them, but what I want to talk about is first, the subconscious does need to process a lot and categorize things and put them in the right compartments and file them accordingly. And it does that when you sleep. And so that's the most superficial layer of dreams. The next layer, I guess, is when you um, well, there's so many layers, but that's the first layer. Another one is a great indicator of where you've been emotionally in your life. So how you're doing emotionally shows itself in dreams to show you in a bigger, more dramatic and more abstract way how you've been doing emotionally. And it makes it so dramatic that you can wake up from one sweating, because it could be a nightmare or it could be the most pleasant dream. So those are the ones that people know about and they're familiar with. But what happens is that when you leave, when I call it you leave, because when you sleep, a part of your soul does leave your body, your consciousness, and you gain access to multiple dimensions. The confines of the physical world no longer apply. And when you do that, you go into another dimension, time doesn't apply, space doesn't apply. The time to create is no longer limited by the laws of physics. So many things don't apply anymore, and you get to play. You can visit, dead relatives. You can see the future, revisit the past. You can do a lot. There are people who, they get really deep into lucid dreaming where they have control over that and they get to do a lot. Now, I didn't really go into lucid dreaming so much because it's such a dense topic. But what I liked from my dreams is that because my dreams do have a predictive quality, it is a way to for sure prove to myself and the people around me who are total atheists or whatever they are. I would say, I'm not sure if they're atheists, but whatever they are, but it's not very spiritual. They cannot argue that I had a prediction 2 months ago that came true today. They did in the beginning, but when I talk about it, they're all kind of won over. And it's not like I want people to believe in my dreams. I want people to know that there is more. There is more and there is proof. People say you cannot prove it. I said, yes, I can prove it. Just look at my journals. Look on well, that's why I liked Facebook. I don't really write on it anymore because Facebook, I'd be like, I woke up, I had a dream about this. And then 3 months later or 2 months later, I'd have the realization. And if people would, just go back a little bit, they would see the dream. So that was really helpful. I think that itself is so valuable because it takes the what if this is all BS out of the question. And some people were like, well, it's self-fulfilling prophecies. You made it happen. I said, well, there's certain things, yes, I could have possibly made happen, but certain things I never, ever, ever, ever could have. So I think that dreams just have a lot of potential, and what you want to get out of them is really personal to you. What does it mean to you? I'm somebody who likes to know a little bit about the future. And it kind of eases me into good news and bad news. And it also helps me deal with, let's say, there's a tragedy, then if I know it in advance, then I'm kind of more emotionally prepped for it. Or if there's something positive coming, then I can get my hopes up a little bit more. Or if I'm trying to manifest something and I'm not seeing it in my dreams, I kind of chill out about it. I just say, hey, if it was going to happen, I would have already seen it in its full maturation. And I would have kind of so I don't really like go out there trying to force manifest. And this happens when you try to meet somebody like a romantic partner. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying to manifest somebody. And I'm trying to go out, see if I'm going to run into that person. And if I haven't dreamt it, I'm like, it's not going to happen. The last friend that I made, I met him 3 weeks before I met him in my dream. And he was one of my new best friends. And we're like more like soul buddies. We're so weird and different in age, but the dream allowed me to give him a chance to become that close to him because I just remembered him so well and I knew we had a connection. So dreams can really help you in your life if you allow it, but how it helps you has to be your version. Now, you'll notice that I mentioned it 1,000 times. You need to figure out your own version of what you need and figure out your language of how that is going to be relayed to you. Like figure out the language of your subconscious and how it wants to talk to you. And it gives you what it thinks is important to you. So that's really important. So I can't make a really big, broad statement about dreams, but I can tell you what it means to me.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I started a dream journal because of your book, and I wrote down my dream this morning. I had three dreams. So it's very interesting to write it down. And then as you're writing it down, a little bit more comes from writing it down. You know how if you wait an hour and someone asks you what it was, you can have an idea of it and then it's gone. But if you write it down, I had the idea of it, and then I was right. I was like, oh, and then that happened. Oh, and then that happened. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen over the next month as I write these dreams down and see if there's patterns, because I'm excited about that. And that was a really powerful thing about your book. So I think that's a great segue into your prophetic dreams that you had in 2008 and 2014. Would you mind sharing those dreams?
I'll give you the fast version of it. I had a dream that I had a son, and because I'm gay and I was 28 at the time, it was just not a possibility. But the dream showed me my best friend was pregnant, and I was about to take her to the hospital because she was in labor, and her wife came around and said, "No, I got this." And she handed me this boy and said, "This is your son, Cyrus." And I remember holding this boy and falling in love with a child for the very first time in my life. And uh, it just changed everything. And I remember telling my friend, "Hey, we had a baby. It's a boy." And we decided to have, well, 6 months later, they came to me. I was already their daughter's godfather, who I was around since the day she was born. And they came to me and they wanted to see if I wanted to, donate my sperm. And I said, I want to be a father. I don't want to donate sperm. And I also want to be a father to our goddaughter if as she gets pregnant, if she gets pregnant. And, uh, and we had to do it at home, like not old-fashioned style, because obviously my body parts don't work like that. But like with turkey baster style, so with the syringe and just here's my goods, go put it in somewhere. Anyway, she got pregnant, she had the baby, and we didn't like the name Cyrus, we named him Sky. And it changed my life. All of a sudden, that one dream led to me having a family now. It was these two women and my two children, and it was the best thing of my life. And then 4 years later, I had a dream about my father and one of my best friends dying. And I remember specifically burying them and seeing all the stuff and telling my best friend about it. I'm like, hey, someone's going to die. Two people are going to die. Two people are going to die. And, I've had enough prophetic dreams for people to just know by now. But she was like, you and your dreams happy. And I still love that text because it's one of the most precious texts that I have because she was one of the people that died. Anyway, a couple of months later, my son and my best friend died in a car accident, his mom. And my daughter was in the car, but she survived. And that really did prepare me because it was an accident, but it didn't feel like an accident because if I saw it 2.5 months before, and I also had another dream the morning of, I felt like, okay, this was already written. So there was nothing I could have done to stop it. And ironically, I don't see the faces. I've only seen the actual face of the person once in my life, and it was my grandmother's who just died recently. Other than that, I always see like representations of the person that's going to die, the gender or my relationship with them. In this case, it was my father as opposed to my son, or my one of my other best friends as opposed to the other best friend. So it was all they all have some sort of it's like a puzzle that I have to solve, and sometimes it's frustrating. And but the cool part is that after my son died, now everyone is a believer. Whoever was not a believer is a believer. And, I went to sleep that night on this night of when my daughter was in the ICU, and I saw him and he started visiting me. And it was the first time I really established a true connection with somebody who had died on a regular basis. Because before I would have like a single visitation dream or something, but um, when my son died, I needed him so bad, and he was there. And he guided me through every step of the grieving process. So when people say, "Oh, can you be my grief counselor?" I always say no, because I had help. I had help from the person who died. Both of them, actually. Both of them that died were always there guiding me. I could feel them when I was awake. I could feel them, see them, talk to them, ask them questions. Why did you die? Like I literally was like, why'd you die? And they give me like a really good, legit answer. Like everything I would ask. And then my son started guiding me towards having more children. And I thought, I am not having another one. My baby maker's dead. I've suffered enough loss. I cannot do this. And then he showed me this curly haired little boy, and I was holding him in the water, and there was another boy outside. I thought it was my other son, the dead one, but it turns out they were twins. So, magical, um, I guess I was gonna say a magical intervention caused me to. It was like literally like being forced to have children. And as a gay guy, it's not an easy thing. I was at school. I just got into UCLA, and it was like you don't just come up. You need over $100,000 to be able to have a baby on your own, and just the money just shows up because I am a master manifester. But it just showed up, and the baby showed up, and their house showed up on its own. And but the thing is, the dreams led me to the life that I'm living now.
That
And had I
is
not paid attention, I cannot imagine what my life would look like. I'm sure it would have been good, but the richness of where I am right now feels like I'm on my soul's path. And I feel that sometimes when you listen to messages like that, you're more likely to be on your soul's path and on the journey and less lost.
okay. So there's a lot to break down. So thank you for sharing that. So there's a lot of powerful things here that I think we really need to hit on. So you had some, I think it's safe to say, some of the most, probably the most incredible life changing moments occurred through dream state and then manifested in the material world. Now, the dreams and this intuition was fostered to you as a child, right? In your book, you mentioned that your family was open to this concept and you talked about it a lot as a family over the dinner table, something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, it was just common knowledge that you can see things in advance in dreams. And whoever had a prediction dream would be so proud of it, they would brag about it. And then the other person would try to one up them and say, well, I had this dream. So it was very much just a happenstance. It was more like coincidences in our minds. And it wasn't like a skill that I've honed the way that I have, because now I'm like the master dreamer in the family where I can give you like a time, like, if I have this dream, we got 2.5 months or 2 months, before this becomes true. And basically, yeah, it was more like a rough, it was a great fertile environment for this to occur.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And you can see that in everything. If you grow up in a family where you have a dad and brothers who are obsessed with football, all of a sudden you start knowing different athletes' names and their contracts, and you know a lot about football. Or if it's about dance, or if it's about fishing, or if it's about whatever it is, that's the environment that is fostered that starts to, by meiosis, starts to seep into your blood just because you're around it. And so I think one of the most important things I'm trying to get at is these things, these prophetic dreams, channeling, intuition, these are not things that are separate from you. These are not things that you cannot do. You just have to practice. It's just like going into the gym. You have to build the muscle. In order to be a good musician, you have to suck at music first. In order to be strong, you have to be weak first. In order to be rich, you have to be broke first. And it's this idea of we just haven't, as a society on a grand scale, been pushed that narrative, whether through commercials, politics, schooling, education. And so for us at this juncture, it seems separate. But as more and more people like yourself are sharing this information, they're saying, well, this is how I became so good. It didn't just happen overnight. I wasn't just born this way. I had an environment that fostered it. And I see this consistency over people that were hypnotherapists or channelers or whatever their passion is in life that they're really good at that isn't in the materialistic dogma sense of the world. They had some family member, usually a parent or something, that fostered it, usually at a young age. And it boils down to your belief system and what your belief system really allows you to do. And your book does a really good job. I want you to hit on this real quick. Is when we try, because you're an intuition coach, author at this point, and you say the easiest way to get someone to change their belief is you have to kind of find cracks in their current belief system. how are the ways that you do that so someone watching this who's doesn't believe anything you're saying can kind of have an more open mind to this concept?
Well, first of all, I want to say if you don't have the desire for something, then it's not even accessible to you unless you believe somehow your mere exposure is gonna draw it into your life. So, in something, when it comes to something like intuition, you have to have the desire. And the hardest part is actually identifying as intuitive or anything. Anytime you step into a new role, it's not just stepping into the role, it's identifying as that person. And that's a really hard one because my family always had dreams, prophetic dreams, but I didn't consider myself a prophetic dreamer. I never had prophecy dreams. I didn't have any until I was in my 20s because I never paid attention, nor was it important to me, or not. I didn't need guidance enough to be given the dreams at that time. But there was a moment where I had to identify as somebody who had prophetic dreams. And then as soon as I stepped into that role, it started opening up for me. So first of all, if you're somebody and who wants to be more intuitive, first you have to give intuition some level of importance. Because if you don't think it has any value in your life, you're not going to prioritize it. Your subconscious receives a lot of data, millions of bits of data per second that it deletes and it distorts and it generalizes. You only are able to process this much 0.00001% of reality in each moment of not you're absorbing this information, but you're only able to be aware of this little tiny bit because your subconscious is like, okay, this stuff doesn't matter. They don't match your belief system. I'm going to delete everything so that you can be hyper focused on what's really important for you. Because if it gives you more than you can handle, you're going to, blow a fuse and you're going to pop. So if it's not important to you, it will not get prioritized. And if you don't think it's important, it's not going to get prioritized. Now, some people believe that the news is important. So if it's even if they're somewhere and it's on in the background, their subconscious will pick it up. They'll be there and they'll draw it to themselves or they'll be drawn to it. And because that's where they think the source of information that's valuable it comes from. But if you believe that there is some value to intuition, then you have to go on that path. So that's the first thing before you start putting cracks into the foundation. Then you got to find what beliefs you have that are completely um, opposing the idea of intuition or you being an intuitive. Then you got to start putting cracks in its foundation by disproving that it's not always the case. We have a way of saying this is how it is or I always do this, or we always do that, when it is farther from the truth, farthest from the truth. We don't always do anything. An addict says, I'm always reaching for heroin, but no, you don't. Sometimes you eat, sometimes you sleep, sometimes you do other stuff. We don't always do anything. And the moment we realize that no, things are not just so black and white, we start putting the crack in the foundation. And each belief, if you present me with a belief, I'll tell you, like, that's how you put a crack in it. But once you start dismantling the thing that's holding you up, the columns that are holding up your old beliefs, and they start crumbling a little bit, then you can start putting in new beliefs. But new beliefs are really hard to put in as an adult because you could even believe in me and all the channels and all this stuff and believe what I say. But for you to like think that that's you, and you can do that. You can be this weird person because you might think it's weird. It takes a lot. I mean, for me, channeling has been a really rough thing because channeling is like the weirdest of the weird when it comes to intuition. And I've had so many moments where I channel. I mean, I pretty much channeled most of this book, but like verbal channeling, when you close your eyes or you open your eyes and something else comes through you. And when I do that, I feel like a weirdo. And I stop myself, but I still do it enough. But I know where my blocks are. I've done it, but I've also stopped myself. And I listen to it and I judge it, and then I stop myself. And I actually somehow played one of my channeling sessions for a Christian, somebody who's super religious, and they were like so impressed. And they were like, "Oh my God, you got to do this more." I'm like, "Wait, this is not Jesus stuff." They were like, "But it's so unique, so different." And I thought, I was shocked because I thought, God, I'm going to freak this person out. I freak myself out every time I do this weird stuff. And this person who I thought would be judging me, I don't even know what made me play it for him, um, was just like, now I'm inspired to tap within and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, oh my God, what a different reaction than what I thought it was. But yeah, so beliefs are important because once you understand how much is filtered through your beliefs, well, everything is almost pretty much everything is filtered through your beliefs, then you'll understand the importance of being able to shift those beliefs to be able to get the life that you want. Now, so what are the benefits of intuition? So why would somebody want to crack their old beliefs or try to identify that? Intuition crosses the boundaries of time and space, and you can get guidance from the whole of you, not just the little conscious mind aspect of you that is only aware of very little information at once. So when you tap into the whole of you, and at the very least, it's your subconscious mind who's been storing all those millions of bits of data per second that you've been unaware of. At the very least, if you can tap into your subconscious and get guidance from your subconscious, then you've already had like an advantage, or you've gained an advantage that other people don't have in your life. Your subconscious can pick up someone's body language when you're communicating with them, when your eyes might be hyper focused on what they're saying and your attention's on them, but their body language is saying something completely different. Now, 55% of communication is done through body language. Only 7% is done through words. So when someone's looking at you and saying something, and 37%, I believe, is through tonality, their tone. We're aware of the tone, we're aware of the words a lot more. We're not really aware of the body language, but the subconscious is. So when you walk away and you're wondering if that person was into you, you might say, "Hey, they said I like you, I want to go on a date with you. I really think you're amazing," but your body saw everything. Your subconscious, sorry, your subconscious saw their body. I refer to your body as your subconscious because your body is where the subconscious stores information, and your subconscious saw their body language. So if you tap into your subconscious and say, "Hey, was that person interested in me? Or do you think there's a chance?" It'll say no if their body said no, because it's aware of a lot more. And it's also, if when you're in somebody's electromagnetic field, you exchange information too. So that's a whole nother topic, that you have access to as well. But there are great advantages to tapping into more than your conscious mind. And that's usually a good motivator to tap in.
Yeah, I'll say. So it starts with first you have to have the desire, which makes sense. Anybody that wants to do anything, you have to have a passion or a want for it. Then you have to build a belief that will allow that to be readily available for you. And then third, I think you have to foster it through practice. You have to build it into your daily routine and do it over and over again. And just for folks listening, I've heard this a lot where people go, I don't have a belief system. That is a belief system. By saying you don't have a belief system, you're believing that you don't believe in anything. So the first second of anything is you have a belief system. Even if you think you don't have a belief system, you're believing that you don't believe in a belief system.
Well, belief systems are programs that are running automatically in your subconscious. So you have millions of programs. There are countless programs running all at once within you. So we have countless belief systems. We just have to know how to rewrite those programs.
Absolutely. And the hardest part, I think, for people, especially for me when I first started 6 years ago, was it's that first thought of like, oh, so all I have to do is just say, I believe I'll be rich. I believe I'll have $1 million, and then $1 million will fall onto my bed. And what you don't realize is that it's a dualistic world. And the language of this material world is physical action. So you can have that belief, but then you have to match it with physical action. And it does take work. It takes work. It's not easy. Am
Well,
I right?
I agree with you, and I don't. First, I do because it is hard to just wake up and say I believe that that I'm going to have $1 million. The thing is, you can believe you have $1 million, but if your entire body and your reactions and emotions oppose the idea of being rich, you're not really having that belief. Once you have the belief, you're literally living as though you have the $1 million. Now, I personally, I live a very rich life, but my bank account is not necessarily at the millions yet. I have a very, people looking at me think that I have way more than I do because I am a manifester and I have everything. I have a great house, I have a great car, I have children, I'm a single dad. I do so much. I go on vacation for a month. I do everything. But uh, when it comes to certain things, you have to literally make an inner shift. And until the inner shift happens, the action is futile. So, yes, the action is important, but first there has to be an inner shift. The inner shift will happen, then the opportunities come up, and you almost get tested as if, hey, are you sure you've changed your inner shift? Because the person who changed their inner or had their inner shift, the person who changed their inner self would react differently to this situation. And you're acting the same, or are you acting different? And they do that. And it gets sweeter. The temptation gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter just to show that you have made the shift. And God damn it, I had an epiphany that I will not share with you about my own life right now, about how patience gotten sweeter. But you definitely have to, practice what you preach and say, be the person that you say you are. And then action becomes effortless. Now, action is required. But when you have made the inner shift, the actions are minimal. And you have to understand that when someone says, but it's hard, a lot of work, they don't get it. So that's where I had to disagree with you. When I wrote my first book, I had to self-publish and I had to do a lot of stuff. I had to do a lot of editing. I had to do a lot of stuff. And I didn't know what I was doing. And it just sat there on a shelf and 400 people bought it. Great. They loved it. Whatever. It died. And I don't know what's going to happen to this book, but when this book wrote itself, it was energetically within me first. And all the actions for me to get to where I am now were minimal. One email to a publisher, everything was just one simple action that reaped a lot of rewards. I work at a place, I belong to this social club with a lot of creative people. And I remember telling them, I'm writing a book, I'm looking for a publisher. And half the people there are agents and they have all this stuff, and they were just like, "Oh, good luck, good luck. It's going to be a while." And of course, I'm like, "Well, I sent an email out, and then 2 days later, they got approved. I'm signing a deal. I'm getting an advance." And they were just like looking at me like, "Okay, can you teach us this manifestation thing that you do?" Um, but it's really just knowing that whether you have ch created an inner shift or if your energy is emanating that, and if you feel it, then you act. You never act before you feel it. And I know this is the opposite of fake it till you make it. Because here's the thing, a lot of times we can't believe something until we step into a role. So they say dress for success and do all this stuff. And when you dress for success, when you step out into the world as if you already have everything, the world reacts to you differently and it helps you shore up your belief and say, oh, this is what the world would be like. And you get to draw that into your energy or your vibration, and then it'll be easier for you to switch your belief. But it only happens when the belief is switched. And then once this belief is switched, then you have to take the actions to bring that money to you. So fake it to make it helps with kind of stepping into the role a little bit early, and then having other people's reaction because unfortunately we are, despite how many books I can write about it, we are a social creature, and how others perceive us really has a larger impact than how we perceive ourselves in the very beginning stages of our lives. And so fake it to make it's really good for that, by the way. So
I think that's a good conversation. I want to sit there for a second because fake it to make it, especially as you go through this type of understanding and reading your book and other books like it, is there is an aspect of fake it till you make it, but for some reason it's become this toxic term in my generation because of the first thing people think of fake it to make is like on Instagram is
influencers.
influencers pretending like they own a Lamborghini, but they don't, and taking photos in front of a mansion, but it wasn't their mansion. Having really expensive clothes on, but using a ton of credit to do it and being in a ton of credit card debt. And then so we look at this and go, oh, they're lying. And so this fake it to the make it has had this connotation synonymous with someone's lying to take advantage of you, to get you to follow them, to get you to listen to them, even though they haven't done the steps. And so there are versions, I think, and I want to hear your opinion of this, of fake it to make it that is lying. And I think it comes from an energetic frequency of, I am doing this to lie to the public, to get followers or to get clout or to get this egotistical, narcissistic feeling. But then there is a very real fake it till you make it energetic where it is, I am going to buy this expensive suit, even though I might not be able to financially. Should I be affording it? No, but it's going to put me in the mindset of abundance and self confidence. And it's going to actually help me believe a different thing. It's going to help me act a different way. It's going to help me react to different things in my life, that will actually then help shore up that path that you're going to go down that will benefit you and actually create the making it from the faking it. What is your thought on that?
Well, first of all, whenever you do something just so you can be perceived differently, just to be perceived differently, that's the wrong motivation to begin with. You're trying to gain your value from the outside world. That's why if you buy this book, The Charisma Within. No, I'm just kidding. That's my first book. That's what it was about.
Buy it. Yes, buy it.
The Charisma Within was about how to be charismatic from the inside and not use the outside world as your way of feeling confident. Now, you mentioned manifesting money. That's why I brought that up. Or confidence or anything. I honestly believe that whenever you do something with the wrong intention, you're going to get that as a result. You're going to gain exactly what you put. You get what you give what you know, that's basically it. There's nothing you're going to get outside of what you're giving into the world. So if you're just trying to gain followers, guess what? You're going to gain a bunch of followers who don't love you. They love that person. Now, when I said wear a suit and go outside and feel confident, it's funny because I didn't think about how much that suit would cost. It could be something you bought at a thrift store, and it just makes you look like a professional. For example, if that's what you're going for. So I don't really think you should ever put yourself in debt or fake something to create something that's legit and very, you know, authentic within you. Now, if you can, and that was a really bad example, but it is sometimes, but I did say how people react to you is different. Now, the thing about when you wear, let's say you go out in your pajamas or whether you wear something really nice and go out, you present yourself differently and people react to you differently, of course. But then ultimately, it has to be how you feel on the inside. If you think somebody who poses with the Lamborghini and takes a photo and gets a bunch of likes is going to go home to their Honda and feel great about it or feel good about themselves, they're going to feel good about the likes. Really, the whole thing is you've got to feel good on the inside and you're going to love who you have. You got to love what you've got. And you also have to be, have a lot of gratitude for what you have and be authentic. You saw in my book, I teach intuition, but I was very upfront about the parts where I have a lot of shortcomings. And I teach confidence. And in chapter 2, in this one, I talked about my shortcomings because I think that you can have stuff and still have shortcomings. But if you're trying to pretend to be something you're not completely and portray, you're lying. If you're lying, it's one thing. If you're kind of just trying to make yourself feel better so you can have a little bit more support in how you feel, how you want to feel in the world, that's just, we do that with our friends and family all the time. We might be crying, but we go outside and we put on a smile and we just kind of try to get some love and support in some ways. You don't go crying everywhere to everyone when you're feeling sad. So authenticity is key. And when it comes to creating something new in your life, you have to authentically feel that you have what you have because once you realize that you are just energy and the world in your field or the entire universe is also energy and it's also taking shape and form and it's not so solid, then you'll realize that I am everything that I think I am. And then you can think something new and be authentic about it because
Beautiful.
you're genuinely being someone new.
Beautiful. And I think this is a great segue because you have a quote in your book that I love. where you said the most widely accepted lie in all of humanity is that we are all alone and that we are not supported. And you use one of the most beautiful examples. It kind of looks like the cover of your book of the tree example that kind of illustrates the idea of as above, so below, of the branches and the root system. Can you just explain that? Because that was one of the bigger aha analogies that I got from your book.
You can imagine how I felt when I received that bit of information. I was like, oh, this is so good. And
Yeah.
my publishers liked it so much they made it the book cover. That was
Yeah.
not my idea. I had no idea what I was doing for the book cover. And I'm an artist. So I basically talk about how we are all one, and it's just such a idea that's been thrown around, and it just sounds so like woo woo or just hippie. And I really wanted to paint a clearer picture as to how we're all one. And I talked about the source of all things, God being a root of a tree and at its purest potential. And as it decides to become physical, it becomes a trunk focused in a specific direction, and that the physical world is beginning to be born and conceptualized. And as the branches start to, well, yeah, they start to branch off, and are created. That's basically the archangels, the angels, whatever you want to call them. I really don't like to put too many labels on stuff because they're different for everyone. And as the branches get smaller, it becomes more collective consciousness. Well, collectives, not collective consciousness on the planet, collective minds that are non-physical. Then as the branches get smaller, it's the soul families. And then when they're really tiny is what you'd call what a single soul, which I don't believe in. And then the leaves are, they grow out of those little tiny branches, and those are our physical bodies and they have a cycle. They usually come in spring, or they start to come in spring and they're dead by winter. And they know that it's a cyclical process and they're going to die someday, but no one grieves them. And they're adding to the whole of the tree and helping it just the same way as the roots are. And basically, the leaves is our physical existence. And I ask, which perspective is true, the leaf on one side of the tree or the other? Or is the leaf the tree? Are the branches the tree? Is the root the tree? Yes, it's all the tree. And that's how we're all one. And trying to understand the perspective of a leaf that's on the other side of the tree is very difficult. But if you all go within, you can find a common ground because you all come from the same source. And that's why the best way to understand the whole of the tree and the whole of existence is to go within. And that is where intuition kicks in. And that's why that analogy ended up on the front of the cover of the book.
Yeah, because it's like if you're on one side of the tree as a leaf and you're looking at another leaf that's green, but you're red, you're judging that leaf. But if you just from a one perspective versus one perspective, but if you realize that you're attached to the same whole from the same source, then you realize that you're just mirror images of each other expressing themselves through this exact same thing.
And you can actually get a glimpse of their perspective. And that's really important because you can only hear about their perspective if you're trying to have a leaf to leaf conversation.
Yeah.
If you go within, you can actually get a glimpse of their world and understand them wholly. That's what's happening in this country right now with the blues and the reds. I mean, people are very committed to their side. There's a very little bit of undecided voters, and they're very committed, and everyone's fighting for freedom. And that's the ironic part. Everyone is fighting for freedom. That is the main part. Now, I have my own side. I don't dislike anyone on the other side, maybe someone. But the people in general, I I see their perspective. I see where they're coming from, but I can't do that from a leaf to leaf conversation. I have to go within and get to the core, which is freedom. And when people feel like their freedom is, being restricted or infringed upon, they freak out. And that's what's happening to our country or the world right now.
And
Everyone
that's
thinks they,
and that's where intuition comes in.
Well, and whenever you feel like no one else really has any true influence in your life until you let them in, you kind of feel free. And ironically, like I've somehow let people into my life, like my immediate life, that have different political viewpoints as me that are very much in my space. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful challenge that I've been given, an opportunity to see the love and the light. And, you know, and sometimes I win and sometimes I lose in terms of with myself, not with arguments.
Yeah.
I sometimes I win the inner debate with myself. Okay, this is love. It comes from love. I had a, I'll be very honest. Like this is a good example of, so I had my children and right before they were born, I met somebody, a guy, and he was with me till they were 4. And then we broke up and he stayed as their father. And because I gave him the children, he didn't make them, he didn't do anything about it. And then he is a very loving human being that is influenced by his surroundings, and as everyone is, there's nothing different than that. And people have different agendas. Anyway, so we became polar opposites of now we don't live together. We don't live in the same city, but we see each other for the children and we live in the same house for like 2 days at a time out of a month for the kids, but we have opposing political viewpoints at this time. And I'm a gay guy, and I was born, I immigrated to this country, and my children are, I love. I'm a. Let's just you can guess my political standpoint. I'm a spiritual guy. I don't have any religious beliefs. Anyway, so we had like it's in my space now. And we had like a heated argument for the first time. We were together for 4 years and we never had an argument like that. And we had our first argument, and then we walked away, and then I had to go within and really try to understand his perspective. And I couldn't do it logically. And I had to do it with my heart and go within. And then I was filled with love and realized, wow, this is all it's about. And then I called and I apologized for even bringing up the topic. And I said, I'm so sorry. I love you so much. Um, I know you're an incredible human being and and you know where I come from. And then we made peace. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting how that's in my space because I've put it in my space. So my attention to it is what brought it into my home in a way, in somewhere where I cannot run away from it. You know what I mean? If it's in your room with your children, with someone who's raising your children. Anyway, so that's a great way to just understand that we are all one, and we have to respect other people's perspective, but you can't do it logically. Sometimes logic just kind of like doesn't do enough.
And that is so important, is because I think so much of this dualistic life is we always try to approach it from a logical, scientific method, materialist standpoint. And I think the power that you and so many other people are sharing is there's this other thing that's actually maybe even more important. It's actually more fundamental. It's this energetic connection. It's this non-physical, you can't see with your five senses, that is actually the glue, the threshold of everything that can solve a lot of these disagreements and can actually relieve a lot of the negative feelings and depression, anxiety type feelings that you have, which is why this work is so powerful. It's just why you have to buy this book. Um, Examples that Happy just gave right now, he gives so many personal, authentic examples that we can all relate to. And that's what was the most refreshing part of this book for me. We've been talking for a while, Happy. I want to ask you before we go, you are a prophetic dreamer. Do you have any relevant dreams that you've had recently about maybe something coming up in the future with what's happening right now?
Well, what is happening right now? What are you referring to?
It could be as vague as something in your life, or something about the world, or anything in between.
And I would think of it like, is it the elections? Does he want to know what the election outcome is? I'm like, no.
I'm not in, I'm one of the folks that has turned all the news off.
Oh, good for you.
I couldn't
You
care
know
less.
what? So I only dream and I only encourage people to dream for the purpose of their own lives. and how to guide them forward and not try to push their agenda on the collective. I have dreams about I've had lots of dreams. I'm going through it. I'm going to be really transparent with you because this is really just for people who are reading my book, who are following the guy who's teaching about intuition and dreams. I've had like the last 2 weeks of like yeah, the last 2 weeks of my life, my whole life. No, that I cannot remember my dreams. Um, and I've just literally my dreams are gone the moment I wake up. So this is really fascinating. So I know there's a purpose in it because there's so much going on in my life that I just this is a good example that there's not room for more data, that I need to be present right now. Because here's the thing, and I want to talk about this. This is so important. We are here to survive first, to stay alive. Okay. Have you do you know Maslow's pyramid? If you're familiar with it, the very bottom is survival. You have to eat, survive. So if you don't have that met, you can't go to the higher levels. Intuition is for up here. It's like you have to feel grounded, safe on the ground, and you have to feel like there's food on the table and all this stuff. And when you feel like, and our society is coming out of survival mode, even though it feels like we're deep in survival, but we know there's going to be a roof. We know there's water. We know the basic needs are somewhat met for most people, even though I know there are countries that do not have that. But I'm talking about the Western, the developed Western nations, um, the first world countries. We know we're in this state. So now we have the luxury of going to intuition because we're not worried about the basic stuff that our ancestors were worried about. So that's why I think there's a time that this is coming. But right now in my life, raising my children and the pressures of a book launch, because there's a lot of pressure, I think my subconscious is just like, hey, I'm gonna just kind of leave you alone and not give you too much data. So that's my stuff. When it comes to dreams, I so there's nothing I can really offer other than who cares what somebody dreams about the freaking world? Make up your own reality. Make up your future. Be a part of the world that you want to belong to. There's half the world that's dark and there's half the world that's light. You decide which half you want to live in because you can say the world's at its worst state ever, or you can say there are more spiritual people having spiritual awakenings than ever in the history of ever. Because first of all, the population is so huge. And even in comparison, the percentage of people having spiritual awakenings is bigger than ever. TikTok has exposed everyone to something. And so you decide what part you want to be on. You decide what part of reality you want to live in. And the worst thing I could tell you right now is some prophecy that I had that you're going to cling on to and get to live it. That's why I don't actually believe in going to a fortune teller because they might be very credible, but they might destroy your entire life by giving you something that might serve you at the moment, but might actually hinder you later. And you believe that, you adopted that, and then now you're screwed. All right. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, no, that's why your book is so great. Everyone need to get this book. Is It's the authenticity for me that just oozes out of the pages, and it makes me feel so refreshed and allows me to now go into my life and do the exercises and the different things that I gained value from it, particularly with belief systems and dreaming that I'm going to implement into my life. So you were one of those for me, one of those voices that I resonated with. You talk about NLP, the way that you took the information and the way that you structured it and the way that you presented it really spoke to me and how I like to receive information. So I'm really blessed to have gotten this book early, and so thank you so much for writing it.
Yes.
And thank you for
And
being authentic and sharing like real world heavy. I mean, we're talking about the birth of children and the death of friends and so many really heavy instances of life that a lot of people don't share, let alone with their own therapist or their significant other, let alone with, in a book and on their podcast and their TikToks and Instagram. So thank you so much and for being a breath of fresh air.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And for anybody that's reading the book, just don't be discouraged if some of the exercises don't come to you naturally. Sometimes some things come unexpected. Some things just you plant a seed and it grows a year later. And sometimes it all just happens at once. That's why I like to offer group coaching because you get to see everyone at different stages when they're developing their intuition. And when other people see that there are other people who didn't do it or who can't get it, and there's people who are some people are just amazing. You're like, do this exercise, like, oh, they have this like this incredible result right away, and some people just don't have results right away. But then other exercises they do. So just don't be discouraged. Read the book. There's enough in the book that if you never do the exercises, it will open you up.
I completely agree.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Happy.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.